Cut open a papaya, and it seems almost designed to surprise you. Beneath the green or golden skin is bright orange flesh, and at the center sits a hollow chamber packed with hundreds of glossy black seeds. Today, this tropical fruit appears ordinary, sold in supermarkets, blended into drinks, squeezed with lime, or eaten at breakfast tables across the world. But the papaya is not originally Asian, African, or even Caribbean. Its story begins thousands of years ago in the tropical Americas, and its journey from a wild plant to a global food followed indigenous farmers, European conquest, ocean trade, colonial plantations, and some of the earliest attempts to move tropical crops around the planet. Long before Europeans knew the fruit existed, people in Mesoamerica were already living with and cultivating papaya. The exact history of its domestication is complicated because papaya grows easily in tropical environments and its seeds travel readily. But the cultivated papaya, Carica papaya, is native to tropical America, with its origins strongly associated with southern Mexico and Central America. Imagine that landscape before European arrival: humid forests, cultivated fields, villages surrounded by useful plants, and trade routes connecting communities across Mesoamerica. Papaya fit perfectly into this world. The plant grows quickly, often producing fruit while still relatively young. Its soft flesh is sweet when ripe, while the green fruit can be prepared differently. A single fruit contains an extraordinary number of seeds, making the plant easy for people to carry and reproduce. And that simple biological advantage would eventually help papaya travel around the entire tropical world. To understand why, look at the plant itself. A papaya doesn't resemble a typical orchard tree. It usually grows as a tall, relatively slender, mostly unbranched plant, crowned by enormous, deeply lobed leaves. Fruits cluster around the upper trunk beneath the leaves, sometimes hanging so densely that the trunk appears covered in green or orange lanterns. Some papaya plants produce male flowers, some female flowers, and some cultivated forms produce hermaphroditic flowers. For farmers, those differences matter enormously because flower type influences whether a plant will produce the fruit they want. But there is another strange feature hidden inside papaya. Cut an unripe fruit or damage the plant, and a milky latex appears. Inside that latex are protein-digesting enzymes, most famously papain. That chemistry would eventually give papaya uses far beyond simply eating it. For centuries, however, papaya's world remained centered in the Americas. Then, at the end of the 15th century, the Atlantic world changed violently. Spanish expeditions reached the Americas, followed by conquest, colonization, disease, migration, and an enormous exchange of plants and animals between continents. Maize, potatoes, tomatoes, cacao, chilies, and many other American crops began journeys outward. Wheat, sugarcane, livestock, and Old World crops moved in the opposite direction. Papaya became part of this global movement, and unlike crops that required complicated cultivation or very specific environments, papaya had a useful advantage. Seeds were small, numerous, and easy to transport. A sailor, merchant, settler, or farmer didn't need to carry a heavy living tree across an ocean. Seeds from a fruit could be dried, packed, carried aboard a ship, and planted wherever heat and rainfall allowed them to survive. During the 16th century, papaya spread beyond its American homeland. Spanish and Portuguese maritime networks connected the Americas with ports across the Atlantic, Indian Ocean, and Pacific worlds. Papaya followed those routes. This is where the fruit's identity begins to transform. A plant that had once belonged to the food landscapes of tropical America started appearing thousands of kilometers away. It reached Caribbean islands and other tropical regions early in the colonial period. From there and through Iberian trade networks, papaya was carried toward Africa and Asia. Picture a wooden sailing vessel arriving at a tropical port. Alongside barrels, textiles, metal goods, spices, and other plants are tiny seeds representing something completely unfamiliar to local farmers. Plant them in the right climate, and within a relatively short period, the strange American plant could begin producing fruit. That speed mattered. Papaya doesn't demand the decades of patience required by some fruit trees. Under favorable conditions, it grows rapidly and can begin fruiting surprisingly early. For communities encountering it for the first time, this made it a practical crop to adopt. Soon, papaya was growing so successfully outside the Americas that generations later it could appear native to places it had reached only through global trade. India became one of the major centers of papaya cultivation. The fruit also became established across Southeast Asia, tropical Africa, Pacific Islands, and other warm regions. And something fascinating happened wherever it arrived. People made it local. Papaya stopped being merely an imported American fruit and entered entirely different cuisines. When fully ripe, its flesh becomes soft, aromatic, and sweet. It can be sliced and eaten fresh, often paired with citrus. But harvest it while still green, and the experience changes completely. The flesh is firmer and far less sweet, allowing it to behave more like a vegetable. That created two culinary identities inside the same fruit. Across parts of Southeast Asia, green papaya became an ingredient in savory dishes. Perhaps the most internationally famous example is green papaya salad, strongly associated today with Thailand and Laos in different regional forms. Shredded, unripe papaya provides crisp texture, while chilies, lime, fish sauce, fermented ingredients, peanuts, tomatoes, or other additions create combinations of sourness, heat, saltiness, sweetness, and crunch. The remarkable part is that the central ingredient came from the other side of the planet. A fruit domesticated in tropical America had become essential to dishes that many people now instinctively associate with Southeast Asian cuisine. Papaya's story is therefore not simply about a fruit spreading. It is about how food becomes culturally transformed. Once an ingredient enters a cuisine, people don't merely preserve its original use. They experiment. They harvest it at different stages. They combine it with local flavors. They discover what its leaves, seeds, latex, and flesh can do. And papaya offered an unusual amount to experiment with. Remember that milky latex? Papain breaks down proteins. That means papaya can help soften meat. Long before anyone needed to explain the molecular chemistry at a dinner table, people could observe the practical effect. Preparations involving papaya could make tough meat more tender. Eventually, papain became commercially valuable. The latex of unripe papaya fruits could be collected and processed as a source of the enzyme, which found applications in food processing and other industries. Suddenly, the papaya plant was producing more than breakfast fruit. Its chemistry had economic value, but as papaya cultivation expanded, farmers encountered a problem that has followed agriculture throughout history. When humans grow large populations of the same useful plant, diseases find equally large opportunities. One of papaya's most notorious enemies is papaya ringspot virus. Its symptoms can include distinctive ring-like markings on fruit, leaf distortion, reduced growth, and declining yields. In places dependent on commercial papaya production, the virus can become devastating. Few places illustrate that struggle better than Hawaii. Papaya had been introduced to Hawaii long before the modern commercial industry developed. By the 20th century, papaya farming had become economically important, with varieties such as Solo helping establish the island's reputation for smaller, sweet papayas suited to individual consumption. Rows of papaya plants stretched through warm agricultural landscapes, each trunk carrying clusters of fruit intended for markets beyond the islands. Then disease threatened the system. Papaya ringspot virus had been known in Hawaii for decades, but when it reached the important Puna growing region on the island of Hawaii in the 1990s, the consequences were severe. The virus spread through orchards, leaves became distorted, fruit quality and production suffered. Farmers watched a crop they depended on become increasingly difficult to protect. Traditional control methods could slow problems but could not simply erase the virus. The papaya's long history of human intervention was about to enter a completely new phase. Scientists developed papaya plants genetically engineered for resistance to papaya ringspot virus. One of the best-known varieties to emerge was rainbow papaya. Instead of fighting the virus only outside the plant, researchers had given the papaya a genetic defense related to the virus itself. For Hawaiian growers, this wasn't an abstract laboratory experiment. It was an attempt to rescue an agricultural industry. Rainbow and another resistant variety were released to growers in the late 1990s, and virus-resistant papaya became a famous example of agricultural biotechnology being deployed against a specific plant disease. Think about the contrast. Thousands of years earlier, farmers in tropical America had selected and propagated useful papaya plants using seeds and observation. Now scientists were manipulating genetic material to protect descendants of that crop from a microscopic pathogen on Pacific islands, thousands of kilometers from papaya's original homeland. The fruit had traveled through nearly every major stage of agricultural history: domestication, migration, colonial exchange, global trade, commercial farming, and biotechnology. Today, papaya grows throughout tropical and subtropical regions, and some of the world's largest production occurs far from the plant's ancestral home. India, in particular, became an enormous producer. Papaya is also cultivated extensively in countries across Asia, Latin America, and Africa. Walk through markets in different parts of the world, and the same species can appear in remarkably different forms. Some fruits are small enough for one person, others are enormous. Flesh may range from yellow and orange to deep reddish orange. Shapes can be round, pear-like, or elongated. Flavor, sweetness, texture, and aroma vary between cultivars and growing conditions. Even the names reveal the fruit's journey. Words related to papaya moved between languages alongside the plant itself, while in some regions it acquired completely different local names. In parts of the world, you'll encounter names such as pawpaw, although that creates confusion because North America also has an entirely different fruit called the pawpaw, Asimina triloba. Two unrelated fruits can therefore share a common name while belonging to completely different botanical histories. And the papaya's own botanical family contains another surprise. Carica papaya is the dominant cultivated species we know globally, yet its broader relatives connect it to a much more diverse American botanical world. The supermarket fruit is only the most internationally successful member of that story. Its success came partly from qualities humans repeatedly reward in crops: rapid growth, abundant seeds, attractive flesh, versatility, and the ability to thrive in warm climates. But globalization did the rest. Every ocean crossing changed what papaya could become. In the Americas, its history reaches back toward indigenous cultivation and domestication. Under European maritime expansion, its seeds became travelers. In Asia, Africa, the Caribbean, and Pacific regions, farmers incorporated the plant into new agricultural systems. Cooks transformed ripe and green fruits into foods suited to local tastes. Commercial growers selected varieties for sweetness, size, shipping, and appearance. Scientists eventually altered papaya to defend it from disease. And after all of that, the final product can still look incredibly simple. A fruit on a table, that is what makes the history of ordinary food so deceptive. When you slice a papaya today, you're looking at the result of thousands of years of human choices. Indigenous farmers helped turn a tropical American plant into a cultivated food. Sailors and colonial trade networks carried its seeds across oceans. Farmers from entirely different cultures planted those seeds and made the crop their own. Cooks discovered that one fruit could be sweet when ripe, crisp and savory when green, and useful even for enzymes hidden inside its milky latex. Then, centuries after papaya crossed the world's oceans aboard sailing ships, scientists stepped in to help protect it, using technology those first cultivators could never have imagined. Papaya didn't simply spread around the world. Everywhere it went, people reinvented it. And the next time you scoop those black seeds from the center of its orange flesh, remember what those tiny seeds once made possible. They turned an American fruit into a global traveler, carrying the history of exploration, trade, cooking, agriculture, and science inside something small enough to fit in the palm of your hand.